It's Monday, the 10th of February, 2025. Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories in 5 minutes. Let's get going. How about story number 1? The country's most expensive home and estate in Toorak in Melbourne has sold for $150 million, beating the previous record price, which was in Sydney's eastern suburbs, by $20 million.
The 1867 built Kunak, owned by Paul Little, he of Toll Holdings fame. He made his money that way. Also, his wife is Jane Hanson, Chancellor of the University of Melbourne. Don't know who the buyer was. They bought it for $14.5 million in 2002, sold it for $150 million over the last week, though they did renovate it, apparently, Michael. According to the Fin Review, it's an Italianate mansion, 1.1 hectares, pool, cabana, tennis court, park-like gardens, 200-metre frontage onto Clendon Road. The previous Melbourne record was $80 million for another property in Toorak, which has been knocked down since. The previous house record nationally was $130 million for 2 different homes in Point Piper in Sydney. The apartment record's actually $140 million for Barangaroo in Sydney's CBD. That's only just completed. Not sure who the buyer of that was a mystery buyer. We don't know who bought Kunak, but I'm sure we'll find out.
Yeah, hopefully so. Now, Sean, it is great to see the top end of the market doing so well, but what about the rest of us? We know that the market ended last year just a touch soggy. Is there any pickup in 2025?
Little early to tell, but there are some positive signs. About 1,700 homes went under the hammer last week. The preliminary clearance rate came in at 67.4%. That's the highest since October last year. CoreLogic's Tim Lawless said the early trend is showing an improvement in selling conditions, which might reflect some renewed confidence on the back of potential interest rate cuts. We'll find out more about them next week. Melbourne's clearance rate came in at 68%, Sydney 73%, still very early though in the season.
Okay, moving on to story number 2 now, Sean. And Labor and the Greens have suffered major swings away from incumbent members in 2 Victorian by-elections, auguring well for the federal coalition in the upcoming federal poll.
In Paran, it appears that Liberal candidate Rachel Westaway has won the inner Melbourne seat away from the Greens for the first time in a decade. The formerly safe Labor seat of Werribee is on a knife's edge. That's in Melbourne's west, too close to call. ALP will probably hold it, but a close run thing. Certainly it's bad news for Jacinta Allen's Victorian government, but also for Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. If you took the 10% swing against Labor in Werribee, replicated across Victoria in the federal poll due before the middle of May, that would result in the ALP losing 11 seats. Now, that won't happen, but it does show that Victoria's 39 seats in the federal parliament are well and truly up for grabs. Victoria is no longer a Labor stronghold.
Story number 3, Domino's Pizza Enterprises is closing more than 200 stores as it looks to reduce the number of loss-making restaurants and placate some rather disgruntled investors.
Yes, 3,800 stores it operates in Australia, Europe and Asia. Now, the bulk of the closures, 172, are coming from will occur in Japan, where performance has been very disappointing, only 4 in Australia. It's one of the first moves by new Chief Executive Officer Mark van Dyke. Now, he replaced the old CEO and founder Don May late last year. Don May famously expanded Domino's. He didn't like closing stores. He liked opening them. However, Domino's now downsizing. It also says it's dumped plans to have 7,100 restaurants around the world by 2033. Investors love the news. Its share price was up 23% on Friday, though it's still down 8% over the past year.
How about this one? Story number 4. Some of Australia's biggest companies, including Australia Post and Canva, Telstra, PwC, they've quit the federal scheme that allows them to claim net zero carbon emissions amid mounting, you would say, concerns about integrity.
Australian corporations have spent hundreds of millions of dollars in the past decade buying offsets in the voluntary market to reduce their climate footprint. But according to The Age, there are rising doubts about whether the projects generating these offsets actually reduce greenhouse gases. Now, more than 100 companies have left the climate active scheme in the past 2 years, with the damaging corporate departures prompting the federal government to consider radically reshaping or even shutting down the so-called voluntary market in carbon credits. Climate Active, which is a federal government-run voluntary register that companies join, report the carbon emissions and their offsets. They can then claim to their customers that they're carbon neutral. Well, not sure that's working. Companies have walked away, including Aussie Post, Cbus Superannuation, Telstra, NRMA, Canva, PwC. Even the Clean Energy Finance Corp, which is actually the federal government's $30 billion green bank, has pulled out of Climate Active. Not a good look.
No, it is not. Last one, Sean. Story number 5. It is Superbowl Sunday in the US, and the game kicks off later this morning in Australia. It is being held in New Orleans and being played between the Philadelphia Eagles, Sean, and the returning champs, the Kansas City Chiefs.
Who cares? It's all about halftime entertainment. Kendrick Lamar, he'll be there. Taylor Swift will be there. She won't be singing, but her boyfriend Travis Kelce's playing, of course. It's Super Bowl 59. 10 advertisements have been sold for more than $8 million each, according to Variety. Stella Artois has done it. Haagen-Dazs, Hellman's Mayo. You've got to sell a lot of mayo to get your money back on that one. The one that Stella Artois, that involves both David Beckham and Matt Damon. So I suppose they're getting a fee too. Donald Trump's due to turn up. No sitting president has ever been at the Super Bowl. Fox has the rights to the show. Actually a big deal. Kansas City, they're going for 3 straight. Never happened in the Super Bowl. The 2 teams played 2 years ago. Kansas City won that one. So I'd imagine Philadelphia will be very keen to beat them.
You would imagine so. There we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It is Monday, the 10th of February, 2025. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. And if 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed, wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.